Welcome to yCITIES Inside the Mind of an Investor series. yCITIES cultivates an intergenerational innovation ecosystem for middle schoolers and beyond, supporting a diverse pipeline of tomorrow's founders and investors. Angel investors are a vital part of the startup community, and while there are plenty of resources about how to pitch or how the process works, it can still seem like a black box as to why an investor chooses to invest or not only to the founders, but also to peer investors. So we decided that we want to have many conversations with many different investors and to focus on one investor at a time. Every interview is anchored by the same 5 questions, but each conversation is shaped through follow-up questions influenced from the different lenses of our panel of hosts. And today I'm excited to introduce our guest investor. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Vicky. Happy to be here. Quick intro on myself. So I've known Vicky for quite a long time and I had the pleasure of sitting on the yCITIES board for a number of years. So I'm very familiar with what you do and I'm still a huge fan. I spent most of my career as an entrepreneur. I've done 6 companies, batting about 500, 3 wins, three colossal failures. Now I do corporate innovation and corporate venture investing, and I do angel investing on the side.
So Andy, again, welcome to the podcast, to the video cast. Elaborate, tell us a little bit more, like how did you kind of get into investing? You just gave us a little bit of how you got the seed to start investing.
Yeah.
But talk about how you got into investing and a little bit about your, if you will, your thesis in investing, your risk tolerance. Give us more.
Sure. So how I got into it was being the young, starving entrepreneur that was begging anyone to give them money back in the day. And I've been fortunate enough to have raised a lot of money from angels and VCs as well. It was a give back, right? Once I sort of had my first exit, it was, well, that's what you do, right? You go support the ecosystem, you support your fellow entrepreneurs. And when you're going through that journey, you meet a lot of people in the same situation, right? So that's how I got into it. And it was, really small checks when I was doing, $5,000 or maybe $10,000 checks, just trying to help out. That since has gone up. That's how I got into it. My thesis, I don't really have one. I don't as an angel, I don't go into it going, I only invest in mobile apps that do, e-commerce. I don't have that. I'm very open to just looking at different solutions. And maybe that comes from the fact that I bounced around. I wasn't like an entrepreneur that stayed in one vertical, right? I've done everything from financial services to mobile loyalty, to semantic search. Like I just sort of, whatever is interesting and I can solve for, and where there's a huge need is where I focus. I'm far more interested in the founding team than I am what, necessarily what the thesis would be that would bring them to me. And so that's how I think about it. If I look at it from a lens of work, right? So I work at AARP and I run AARP Innovation Labs. If you don't know AARP, we cater to the 50+ audience. So we've spent a lot of time over the last 5 years building this category called age tech. And so any solution that someone's creating that's going to empower someone to choose how they live as they age, that's what we invest in. I love that as I'll say thesis, because it's wide open, right? It can be anything, but it just has to be focused on helping you age better.
So back in the day, if I recall, the innovation area that you head up at AARP had an accelerator piece. And then I just heard you mention funding or venture. So has that evolved where you are also investing in the companies that are in your accelerator?
Yeah, it has. When we started out, it was just, how can AARP work with startups, right? We didn't do anything with them. So we started focusing on Mass Challenge. So we were one of the founding partners of Mass Challenge Health Tech program and their FinTech program. And that was our primary source of meeting startups. And we would just want to, how do we help you, right? That quickly grew into us developing our own program, our own accelerator, which then led to taking warrants. Again, I had to get AARP comfortable with investing. They'd never done this before. So we took warrants in companies for a year and then was able to convince the CEO to let me start writing checks. So the way it works is we run these 8-week programs, somewhere between 6 and 12 companies per cohort. We get to meet them and work with them for a good bit. And then at the end of the program, we make a decision if we're going to invest. I think we're like 98% of the companies I think we've invested in. The only ones we haven't are ones where I just didn't like the founders. They just rubbed me the wrong way. Any founder that has an answer for every question I give them, no matter what, always sort of makes the spidey senses go a little crazy, because no one has answers to every question. But by and large, it's pretty much a little bit of like a TechStars-ish model where you go through our program and you get money. We deviate from TechStars in that we continue to invest. So we do follow on. I think I don't know, out of the 44 checks I've written, probably 30-ish or so, companies, and with follow-on. So a little bit different model.
So we've interviewed investors before who are like, venture capitalists by day and angel investor by night. And, so on a high level, I guess the difference is that usually angel investors invest their own money, usually, and venture capitalists invest other people's money. Is that a similar situation for you? And do you separate the two investments? I guess your two different hats. Do you separate them? How does that work for your unique situation?
Yeah. So I have two different piles of money. I have my own checkbook, and then I have, my work checkbook. At work, obviously, it's focused on aging. I've had some situations where I belong to something called TBD Angels. Vicky's a member of TBD Angels, where we see deals.
Sean is too.
Shawn?
It's very large, so it's hard to know everybody. Yeah.
It's gotten so big, right? I was telling Vicky, Shawn, before you were on, I think I was the 12th person in TBD, and it was like so small, and now there's like 200-300 people.
I think it was over 300.
So I often will get deals sent to me because they're very specific. If they're health tech, they're fintech, whoever brings it will end up sending it to me through TBD. And I don't know, at least half the time I've already invested through work. And a lot of these VCs, and I don't know if this was the same with the person you talked to, but VCs don't have conflict. VCs can write checks on top of the check they wrote through their companies, where I cannot do that, unfortunately, as a nonprofit, and we have all kinds of commerciality clauses. So that's sort of a bummer sometimes, where I'm like, oh, I really like this company and I want to put my own dollars in, and I can't. But I do completely separate them. I actually don't, for my own personal checks, I'm not focused on just aging. I'm focused on anything that's going to solve a problem for somebody. So that's how
So in a way, you have a thesis for your work-related stuff,
Yes.
and people do, follow that in the deal flow that they send you. But then you had mentioned, as a personal angel investor, you are more of a generalist.
I tend to get the deals, though. I have friends around town that, my buddy Peter Blacklow over at Boston Seed sends me every aging deal he ever sees, and it's like, okay, Peter, like I'll look at other things, or I'm happy to do other stuff, but. And I guess that's the blessing and the curse of having created a category around aging. Everyone just sort of looks at me and says, what do you think? Would you put your money in, or did you already invest? And so that's, I guess, I often don't see a lot of interesting things outside of aging anymore, which is kind of a bummer. And I don't have the time. That's the problem. I don't have the time to, fish around TBD or other, my other VC buddies that send me stuff.
At a minimum, your antithesis, if you will, is going to be like, you can't invest in age tech as an individual.
Pretty much, right? I mean, there's been some things where there's been one instance where I was already about to invest, and I didn't know the company through work. I knew them personally, and I was going to go into the round, and then all of a sudden they showed up at one of our events and they won it, and it was like, oh.
Going off of that, I guess, since you're like a generalist investor, I'm interning at a startup right now, and I've been part of yCITIES, so I've been on like kind of the pitching side. So what for you as an investor makes you want to like talk to a founder, and what makes you pause to like read more about a pitch deck and maybe even get like an introductory coffee?
Yeah, so I will say that there's not a single answer. I really like creativity. So how do you cut through the noise and get someone's attention, right? I have a story that's really interesting. There was a company that like don't come through LinkedIn. Don't, like, if you don't come in through someone I know, you're not going to get my attention. Don't flood my inbox. I get that all the time, right? But I had somebody that was really clever. They recognized that, right? And what they did is they created a video. And remember back in the day, back a couple of years ago, there was that like you'd see a hand drawing videos. They were showing like cartoonish sort of sketching. He built a video, and he DM'd me and tagged me in it and DM'd me like on Twitter. And I was like, who's putting what is this? And I looked at it, and it was like a video specifically to me and why I should invest in this company. And I thought, like, this is I watched it because I was super intrigued. One, because it was
Right.
personalized to me.
Right.
And I watched the video and I was like, this is awesome. Like, that you took this initiative, right?
So they researched about you as an investor, felt that you would be a potential fit as an investor, maybe potentially smart money or something of that sort. But he didn't know you, or that person didn't know you, right? So it was kind of cold, right? It wasn't through a warm introduction like you had mentioned.
Cold. It was just so creative. I had to watch it. Like, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, he took the effort to do this. I'm going to at least watch it. And then it was really interesting, right? So I actually like that, right? The creativity, because that tells me a lot about the founder. Right? You're gonna be scrappy. You're gonna be creative. Constraint is my favorite thing, right? Constraint drives creativity all day, all night. And so, like, those are the things I look for. Otherwise, you better come through TBD. You better come through Peter Blackwell. Jonathan Ebinger. You better come through one of these folks I know well. Otherwise, I just don't have the time. So it literally comes down to trusted sources that come inbound. Money. Investors like to invest with other investors. Like, no one wants to go out on a limb by themselves, right? You want to know, like, okay, who else is in? Do I know them? Because it adds credibility to the deal, to the founders. And especially, I don't do a lot of diligence. So I like literally
will rely on other
people. Right. So from a personal angel perspective, I piggyback. Okay, what's the deal? That's why David Chang used to come to me with deals all the time, because I'll write a check if I think it's cool. I'm not going to do all the work, right? So, and that's worked, right? So far for me, it's worked. But obviously at work, when that's your business, you can't do that. You have to do a lot more. But
are you ever in a situation where you kind of have to move a set of founders into, like, potentially the next category if it's a competition, and so in that case, or a screening committee rather, because you're part of something where they couldn't create a little personalized animation for you? Yeah. What then would stick out and say, this one, I want to hear more, this, put this person through and into pitch time?
Yeah, so ARP is unique in that we're the largest nonprofit in the United States, and we have this special private letter ruling with the IRS that says, here, if you want to continue to be a nonprofit, here's how you have to run your business. And it was never intended for me or innovation or investing. It was intended for our commercial business, but I get wrapped up in it. And one of the things that says is that I can't just meet a startup and say, I like you, you fit our mission, come work with us. We have to, whatever we're going to make available to one, we have to make available to all. So the way we do these things is through these pitch events, right? The pitch event doesn't get you automatically into the cohort, even if you win, but it's the funnel. That's our deal flow engine. So we run 10 to 12 pitch events all over the country. We do them with different partners. We run them at big places like CES. We're going down to Miami. I don't know if you've all been following Mayor Suarez in Miami, and he's trying to get everything Valley company to come to Miami. We're actually doing a pitch event with him in his office on March 9th. So we do these big events to find the companies. And what happens is, once you make it to the stage, you don't have to win. You just got to make it to the stage. And then my portfolio team and I we just make decisions ourselves on which companies we like. And then we'll invite them in, even if they don't win, to be part of the cohort. So that's how we pick the cohort. And then that doesn't guarantee them money. So I guess it's a little different than TechStars. And if you get into TechStars, you get the money, or YC or whatever. But with us, you don't automatically get the money. You get the opportunity now to work with us for 2 months. And during that time period, we are very hands-on, which is also a big difference from what you see in these. We're not teaching you how to put your deck back together and go look for money. We roll our sleeves up and work with them side by side. So we get to know them, not only people, but their product, their solution, their market, all the stuff. And then I make the decision. There's not a steering committee or an investment committee. It's, I like you, I don't like you, and we're somewhat programmatic. We write $100,000 checks, and then it's a question of
right. So it's not your money, but it is your money,
correct,
so to speak, because it's your budget.
Correct.
So question, you being focused on age tech at this point in time, I'd be intrigued. Oftentimes you hear founders talk about, I'm solving a problem that I experienced. Yeah. Are the individuals coming through also folks who could be a part of AARP? Are you like seeing folks, if you will, that are on the right side of the curve with respects to
No.
or is this young founders who are using like design thinking and taping up their elbow with bubble wrap and saying, I have arthritis. Oh, I get it. How are these things coming about?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a couple different things. We do see a lot of personal stories, and it's folks that are, millennial caregivers. They're solving for their mom, for their grandmother. They're solving for someone in their family that they're having to care for, or they're watching, deteriorate, or, whatever it is. There is usually a personal story. We have physicians that are, hey, we see this all day. We want to create a product for it. So we see a lot of that. There is a few that are just high tech, right? Folks that have created something super cool and they're looking for, what's the best application with the biggest market for it. We do see some of that, but by and large, it literally is out of personal need, or that they're just experiencing themselves, or someone that they love is experiencing.
Have you had any that have come across that are on the over 50 or over 45, or that are like looking, to solve their pain, or
we have. I mean, we just had a company come through called Canoe. And I joke around this, right? So we do a lot of, there's sessions like, I do like an Ask Me Anything session with all the founders every cohort. And I'm sitting there, and the founder of Canoe is the founder of LeapPad. I don't know if you guys remember LeapPad for the kids. He built LeapPad and sold it for hundreds of millions of dollars. Before that, he built another company, sold it for hundreds of millions of dollars. So you sit here, now he's probably in his 50s or 60s. And you go, why does he want to come through our accelerator? The dude's already done, 2 companies, had huge exits. And so it's funny. So they come through because we're not like every I hate the word accelerator, quite frankly. We literally do custom agendas for everybody. And it's really about getting to our market, and mostly like go to market testing and that kind of thing. But I'm doing the Ask Me Anything, and Jim is on the call. So I found myself being like, hey, Jim, anything you want to add? Like, it was great to have somebody that has been through it, that has just as much experience as I do in sitting, but he's part of the cohort. So anytime we have that, we really try to get the cohort itself to, and they do this anyways, they all bond anyways, but like, understand there's a person or persons in your cohort that are willing to share, and they've been there, done that. We want more 50 plus.
It'd be kind of cool in my mind for my that they're doing it and still going after it. Right.
Well, Tim Rowe, who Vicky knows real well, Tim has something called Agency, and it's being run by Danielle Duplin. And Agency is part of CIC that's focused on 55 plus entrepreneurs. So they specifically zero in on if you're a 55 plus entrepreneur, they want you to be part of this they have a whole curriculum and program for you. So that's actually really interesting to see that, and it's actually come to life pretty well.
But their pain points that they're addressing are not necessarily age tech related, correct? It's just the entrepreneurs that are integrating into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and not necessarily the 20-something type crowd.
Yeah, I don't know what percentage of the founding. I know they're all over 55, or I think it's 50, 55. I don't know what percentage are actually like creating an age tech solution versus
anything, right? So they're not limited by the age tech thing the way that AARP is, clearly because of what AARP does.
And just from just making sure we're not making an assumption here. When you look at age tech, it's solutions for folks over what age?
So this is what's interesting. So AARP focuses on people over the age of 50.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have that age restriction.
Okay.
It has to be focused on helping people age. Now, this is where it's interesting. I can't go build something for teenagers. It has to have some connection to people over 50. But what we see is a lot of intergenerational. So I'll give you an example right now. Company in our cohort called Gameboard. Gameboard, I absolutely love. Think of like a digital Monopoly board that you buy, put it on your table, and you buy one. My parents live in Florida. So I buy one here in Boston. My kids are on it. I buy one for my parents. You both fire them up at the same time. They are the same game. Like, it literally is replicating the game in 2 different places. So while they built this, it wasn't like, oh, we're building this for old people. They built it for people to play games in different locations in sort of a virtual way. And we look at that and go, well, this is about social connection, whether it's intergenerational social connection, grandkids to grandparents, or it's just friends that live in different states that want to play a game, have Friday night, game night. So we look at things like that. And sometimes we'll look at companies and they don't even think about the 50+ market, but we look at the application of their product and go, wow, this would really, really resonate in our population, or some combination. So we would, in some cases, we will actually go source them and go, let me explain why you should be in this market and how big, it's a $9 trillion a year market. And so, that moves people, right? Like when you're talking that kind of just market, but so it doesn't have to be solely for someone over age of 50. We actually like the intergenerational connection.
Love it.
Yeah. Going off of market, I guess, like, I know you might have mentioned this a little bit before, but do you usually bet on like the horse or the jockey, like the founding team, or like higher market opportunity, that kind of stuff?
This is my personal view. I know people have different thoughts on this. I am 100% all day, every day, the founding team. I'm okay. Now I'm saying that, VCs don't necessarily always do that because they need the huge returns, right? They're looking for the 10, 20, 30x return. So you got to make sure the market's there, right? I don't look at it that way. I don't, if I get a huge return, awesome. If I get a single and a double, just as good for me, right? So I would much rather have a really solid founding team that's going to hit a single or a double and more consistently than, swinging for the fences and it's a 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15, 1 out of 20, opportunity. That's just my approach, both at work and my angel investing.
So then going back to Shawn's question earlier about like risk tolerance and thesis, like, so, a lot of times investors will say like pretty, early on, the high priority is the potential for exit, right? Yep. And so you and so when you bet on the founder, you just said that the exit itself may or may not be like a huge out of the park kind of home run. Can you just speak a little more about that piece of it? And then the risk tolerance piece, is it because the founder and you're trying to like mitigate risk because the founder? How does that work in your mind?
Yeah, so let me be clear. I want everyone to be an exit. It's not like I'm doing anything charitable, right? Like I want everything. I think I've done that once and you know who I did it for. Like I am all about exits. The difference is, and it doesn't even matter the founding team, quite frankly. Like if you look at the statistics on how many companies start, how many hit singles, how many hit doubles, how many hit the grand slam or the home run, your odds are not in your favor. As an angel investor, it's really not. Like that's sort of why I like the piggyback approach. So if my friends over at Boston Seed are telling me they really like this company and it's this thing called DraftKings that they're going to be the first money in, great. I'm happy to put money in, right? But that's the piggyback thing. If I'm just exploring and looking, I'm not trying to right now make a living off of being a VC or being an angel investor. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this because I want to make some money, sure. I want to support the ecosystem. I want to make sure that the more you do this, the more money that gets poured back into the ecosystem, the richer it becomes, right? The more the odds of success go up exponentially. This is why the West Coast kicked our butt for a long time. They'd have these huge exits and they'd all just pour money back into their friends and other guys starting companies, right? We didn't do that historically here in Boston or even on the East Coast. That wasn't a thing. And so that's sort of how I look at it. As an angel investor, I don't want to chase exit. I don't want to do that venture math. I don't like, I have a lot of friends that have done unbelievably well in the venture world. And it's programmatic, right? They know I got to put this much money in. I got to be the first institutional money. I got to own 18 to 20% after the first round. And they can do the math to know all the subsequent rounds, where they're going to net out. And they just do that n number of times. And then it's like playing roulette. If you walk up to a roulette table and you put chips on every single thing, you're going to hit at some point, right? And it's a similar kind of mindset, but I don't want to take that mindset. I just want to go in and say, are you solving a problem for somebody? Do I like you? And my check's I'm not writing gigantic checks. So, and I've been fortunate enough that I've had, again, probably 50-50 wins and losses. So I've never had to dip back into my pocket. It's always like, just roll the money back in when there's an exit. So I just kind of continue to fund these things. And for me, again, it's more of a personal social mission than it is like I'm trying to make a living at it.
So I recently had a conversation about with another angel investor. We were talking about like leveraging off of, it was the topic about like smart money, leveraging our network, the lemming effect, things of that sort. How do you feel? Any thoughts on that? You know, because we often do rely on each other. You know, our smart peers who are experienced in different areas, and we leverage those. But it was just an interesting kind of question about, you know, the lemming effect versus the leverage of our network, and where does that fall in, especially for a generalist, right? Who is investing. If somebody's in deep tech and that's what they studied in school and that's what they, had focused on their, career on, that's a little bit different. What's your kind of like 30-second view on that, very intricate question?
I'm going to give you two different views. I'll give my view as the entrepreneur who's raised a bunch of money, and I'll give you the answer as me, the investor. As the entrepreneur, I don't think smart money exists. I think smart money exists in these little tiny micro doses, because at some moment in time, someone wrote you a check and they sold you a bill of goods. They're going to help you, and maybe they do once or twice, but they sure as hell aren't rolling their sleeves up and actually helping. They're like, oh, I'll make an introduction. Well, is an introduction really smart money? If you're going to make an introduction and get on the plane with me, take me to the person, walk in the door and sit there while I pitch, that's smart money. It just doesn't happen. It happens like little tiny bits, right? Even when you do like advisory boards, I'll give you some shares, you're going to be the smart money. I have a bunch of advisory shares. I get early on, you do a couple phone calls and then it just kind of goes away. So I actually think that this concept of smart money, while everyone gets hung up on it, I think it's way overblown. Right? I'm happy to make introductions to people. Find time in my schedule for that to happen. Right? So it's not that I don't want to be smart money, because I'm happy to be smart money. It's just, we all have lives and stuff happens. And, next thing you know, 6 months have gone by and then it's not the same. As an investor through work, we are 100% smart money. And I talk about this all the time. And the reason being is we are going to roll our sleeves up. We're going to get in the trenches with you for a minimum of 8 weeks, maybe longer. And we're going to sit side by side and actually do the work with you, actually walk you in the door to United Healthcare, if that's where you want to go talk, or whomever you want to talk to that we know. It's not like this passive smart money, I'll call it, right? Where we're just, sure, I'll lob an email over. No. That comes out of my time as the entrepreneur, having worked with all of my investors or like worked with accelerators in the past where they promised this. And I'm like, well, they didn't really do it, right? The mentor model where they bring in 10 people, they bring all of us in and we all experts in one thing and we all give them 5 different answers. And then the founder's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to take, or which advice is more meaningful than the other, or which is smarter than the other. And so I just think it's the really good founders are smart. They figure it out. They're resilient, resourceful. And I don't know that I don't have any data on this, but I don't know that I've seen like a significant difference in outcome when there's smart money at the table versus just a really smart, resilient founder that's going to figure out how to go get what they need. Right.
I got a quick peek behind the curtain question for you. Then we have a lot of folks who certainly watch this and listen to this that would be classified as underrepresented, whether that be race or gender, age. When you talk about it being 100% or your most significant focus is on the founding team, parts of me to help to kind of give you one on this is, in my mind, it would be, hey, for the founding team wanting to get in front, want to get exposure, getting that opportunity. It feels like part of it is certainly for you and what you're doing, show up, right? Come to the pitch events and be a part of that. I would love to hear from you a couple of things around what are some of the things that when you talk about focusing on the team, that you're looking for in that team? What are some of the questions? Give the nuggets to the audience so that they come prepared to give you what you're looking for. And then what recommendations, the third one would be, what recommendations do you have for the industry to help make the community better with helping to find and resource those good companies, those good investments that are out there?
Yeah, so this is one this whole industry struggles with, right? And Vicky, I would strongly suggest that if you don't know John Landry, I'm happy to make an introduction to John Landry, but John Landry has done a bunch of research on this and actually loves, presents it at all these different libraries. But diversity is clearly something that's important. John's research would tell you that female founders are significantly more successful than male founders. But yet that's a category that's so underrepresented in the venture world, in particular, female founded companies. I think that the perspective that you can have, like, and this isn't just like, I built my entire team in the same way I would have built a startup at ARP. I have 3 men on my team out of 25 people. It's every color, I wanted every flavor of the rainbow, if you will, right? I wanted, because everyone has a unique perspective. They all come from a different place, a different background. And that's really important, because if you don't have that, it ends up being very it's like, okay, we both see this and we're going to just do this. And that's not helpful, right? And when times get tough, and because it always gets tough, right? And you have that constraint, if you don't have that breadth of thinking, that breadth of experience, knowledge, it becomes really hard. And you end up, from what I can tell from just been around a long time doing this, you sort of back yourself into a corner and you convince yourself that that's the only thing and the right thing and the best thing, and et cetera. So that's a huge deal for us. We want to see all sorts of diversity on the team. We don't go into it saying, I know this has been a largely controversial topic, even in Boston, and some of the conversations I had is like, should we make every single founding team have to have, minority representation and female representation? And I think that's hard to mandate as a universal thing. If you're doing it as an angel, it's easy. If you're doing it as a business, it may be harder, because just the number of deals you have to process. But I think that's super important. I'm not as interested in did you go to Harvard? Did you go to MIT? I didn't go to any of those schools, right? I went to state schools. I went, and to some extent, I think there's a scrappiness of the underdog that also tends to come through for me that I really like. I'm not saying MIT and Harvard aren't great schools and you don't get great education. You absolutely do. But I think that opens a lot of doors for you, right? So in the same way, based on, whether you're a minority or your gender may not open doors or may open doors, that's a similar thing. So I focus on, I love the underdog. I love they're going to be scrappy, or they're going to be like, okay, I can't, it's just a different mentality, right? So I look for that for sure. The know-it-all factor is a big thing for me. I can tell you that when someone pitches me, I get the standard pitch deck. There's 2 things that drive me bonkers. One is the BCG competitive matrix that everybody shows, and wow, you're the only company in the upper right quadrant and everyone else is down here? How is that possible, right? And so when you press them on that, if you don't get an answer like that, that's a big thing for me. If you botch that, I'm done. Like, that's my running 15-minute clock ends. Thanks for coming. Or if you tell me worse, we don't have any competitors. We're creating the category. We're new. Like, well, I could probably think in about 10 seconds of 5 different competitors that, yes, while they're not direct competitors today, within about 3 minutes they could be, right? So like, that's the thing that drives me bonkers when people pitch me. And the biggest way to get for me to just shut a meeting down. And then I don't even care what the founding team is, what the makeup is. It's like, if that's where you're going with this, I'm not the right person for you. And the last piece I'll give to this around it is when you come in and you start with an exit and work backwards, I'm also not interested in that, because then you're making decisions based on an exit, not on growing your business and creating the best product, the best user experience. You're focused on that. So that's how I look at the founders, and the scrappiness, the makeup of the team, the diversity of the team, the how do they come across? Are they truthful? Do they really understand the market? And then are they trying to grow something versus sell something before we even get started? So that's sort of the way that I look at it. What was the third part of your question? I don't know if I answered it.
It was centered around recommendations you would make to the greater community on maybe ways that this could be improved.
Yeah, I think the greater community, we need to do a better job. And this is why I joined the yCITIES board so long ago. We have to do a much better job at a much younger age of being way more inclusive in teaching. Like I love that Vicky teaches design thinking, right? Curiosity is so important, right? And if you don't do this early, and we innately, we all do some of this, right? We all sort of ask some of these questions, but learning how to do it and the value you can extrapolate from doing some simple like ideation set, like little things, right? We have to do earlier. And that is a totally separate thing from all the STEM stuff. Like that's a whole nother thing, right? You can teach someone to be intellectually curious and they could not like technology at all, but it's still going to make them a much better person in how they process things and the way they think about things and the creativity piece. And by the way, every startup I've done, I'm not the tech guy, right? I got to have the tech guy, sure. I'm the idea guy. So I think it's really important that we continue to drive this down into the schools and even out, like we're doing outside of the schools, because otherwise it's not going to help. This whole thing about right now just coming in and saying, okay, well, we're going to invest more here, here, and here. That's helpful, but that's not going to make the dent that we need versus like, let's start when they're younger and get them coding or get them design thinking or get them whatever it is. Sometimes being naive actually works in your favor, right? Like, I don't want to know too much. I just want to go do this. And I'm going to figure out how to do it. And that was me, my first 2 startups. It was like, what do I know about starting a mutual fund? And I started a mutual fund and
yeah, definitely less jaded when we're younger, right? Right, Johnny?
Yeah, I was like gonna say, I went to the startup lab of my school like last week for the first time. And I was like the only like girl there, which is like kind of like disconcerting, I guess. Like not even like woman of color, just like woman there. And I was like texting my friend about it. So definitely something that needs to be improved, even like at the university level.
You look at it through the lens though, and I guess you're looking at it, I wish there was more, but also looking at it through the lens of I'm here.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that concludes this episode. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I love doing this sort of thing. So happy to do more in the future.